Namaste. Good morning. Buenos dias. Welcome to our friends from Argentina who are visiting with us today. And thank you, Allendale, for once again using your space in a way that promotes social justice for all. It's always a joy for me to be amongst you, which granted is not very often, and since COVID it's been even less. But you are a place of welcoming, a place of calmness, a place of peace in a world that is not calm and that is not peaceful. And I thank you for that. I thank you for being the only group of people I know of in this city who has spent so much time with the structural racism study. When it was first published, Pastor Andy called me and told me of his plan and wondered if it was okay to print it out for each and every one of you and then to study it over the next 6 weeks or so. And I was ecstatic. And I've talked about it as I've gone through the city. I've shared what you have done here at Allendale and hoped that it would inspire other ministers to do the same, other congregations to do the same. So I thank you for that. I want to commend you on the opening of your racial and equity, or is it equity and racial, justice and equity center. That's incredible, and I wasn't here physically for the ribbon cutting, but I was here spiritually, and so I applaud you on that, and I look forward to using that center for some of the work that I continue to do in this community. I want to thank the vocalists. I hear your voice. I share your choice. I share your dream. Thank you for that song. So I'm here today to talk about the racial justice study, the structural racism study. And as you know, before the days of the internet, a study would be done and it would be published and it'd sit on a shelf and collect dust. Now, in the age of the internet, a study is done, it's put on a website, and it collects internet dust. Nothing is ever done with these studies. And people would always say, well, you've studied me, but what are the findings? What are we supposed to do? And as we were writing this study, and I want to share with you how traumatic it was for me as an African-American woman, or a woman of African descent is how I prefer to describe myself. It was very traumatic. I was re-traumatized over and over and over as I relived the history of racism in this city. As a historian, my contribution to the study was to collect and include the history of the racist policies, practices, and laws that had been in place in this city since the first African American came here in 1868. Because I'm 74 years young, much of what I was reporting, I lived it. And so I was re-traumatized over and over. I wasn't able to write my part of the report. I did not know why. Eventually, I understood that it was because I was too traumatized and I needed to go away and take care of myself and then come back. And then I was able to write my part of the study. I also wrote a 3-page piece to my team members, and it helped shed light on the other team members who were African American, like Nikki Gaskin Capehart, sitting over here, who at that time was the Director of Urban Affairs for the city of St. Pete and was our liaison for the study. And she thanked me. She said, Ms. Gwen, I did not know what it was I was feeling and dealing with until I read what you wrote. And then I realized that I too was being traumatized. Racism is traumatizing. It's traumatizing whether you're living it today or whether you're living it or reliving it even before your time. It is traumatizing to read what other human beings have done to a group of human beings for hundreds of years. It is traumatizing. And for an African American or other BIPOC people, we are reliving that. So I want you to appreciate, even standing here today talking to you, it's not easy for me, because I'm talking to you about racism that still exists in this country today, and that I am still suffering from the effects, not only the historic effects, but the present effects. So let's move on into the study. The study was commissioned by Mayor Kreisman and Deputy Mayor Kanika Tomlin, and if I'm correct, they paid for it out of their own personal budget, not their personal money, but their personal city budget, because they didn't want it to have to go before City Council and possibly not be passed. So we conducted this study for 7 months, and at the end of the 7 months, we presented this 200-page study to City Council, and unfortunately, it was not unanimously approved and accepted. I think it was a vote of 5-3, but that was enough for it to pass, and so we moved forward. So let's take a look at the study. I need to see the slides so I can tell you what they say. Okay, so the primary goals of the study was to provide a historical overview. And that was my part, and a snapshot of current data trends that illustrate the ways that structural racism was impacting the lives of Black people in this city and continue to impact the lives. Next slide, please. Another goal was to provide recommendations for updating the policies and practices that may help to dismantle structural racism. And the final goal, please, was to identify additional facets of structural racism that impacts our community today. The next slide, please. So I think the recommendations, let's take a look at them separately, I believe. Do we have them separately? To create an equity department in the office of the mayor. Funding was allocated to support this, and it was of critical need that we establish this. I am so happy to say to you that I think it's 2 weeks tomorrow that the job was posted for a chief equity officer for the city of St. Pete. And to show you how important that position is, the salary says not to exceed $198,000 a year, which is second only to the mayor. Next slide, please. To create a permanent resident-led race equity commission. This is where we will need your help. We know that this will happen. It couldn't happen until the chief equity officer was hired. We're hoping that will be very soon, but we feel that it's important to have this commission, very much like some of the commissions you and I have served on. I served on the Planning and Preservation Commission. So this commission will be made up of various people, representatives from the community. Some may be chosen by city council members, some may be chosen by the mayor. Others will be able to apply to serve on this commission. This commission will serve as a place where members in the community can come and bring issues that relate to equity. Equity in every area of our lives: housing, employment, education, law enforcement. Because if we are going to achieve race equity, it's a huge goal, but it's not impossible. If we're going to achieve it, it has to be achieved in every segment of our lives. It cannot be in one segment and not another, because they all are interconnected. Next slide, please. So the study and the recommendations are only the first step. We knew that. The former administration knew that. And so there's still work to be done. Next slide, please. So we want you to be able to access the structural racism study. So it was on USF's website. They took it down after the governor made certain statements. It is now back up. It's also on the city website, but in case it came down from any websites, we wanted people to always be able to access it. So if you scan this, you will always have access to the structural racism study. Next slide, please. And so what's next? What's next is to continue to do work around this topic, and the next slide is to seek additional funding. I'm not sure if I will even be on the next part of the team because the work was so dramatic, but it does not mean that the work does not need to continue. And there are other qualified people, other people who are very interested in this, and the work will continue. Next slide, please. So I think we missed the slide that would show you our team. So we don't have to go, there it is. So we had 6 professors from USF and 6 members of the community. I want to tell you that the 6 professors from USF can no longer speak about this. We are looking at doing some podcasts. They cannot participate because of what the governor has said about universities and other entities that he has some power over, how they cannot address issues around racism and DEI. They are not able to. Their jobs are at stake. So it's up to the 6 of us who are from the community to continue this work. So now if we can go to the slide that said taking it to the street. Some of you are old enough to remember the Doobie Brothers song, Taking It to the Streets. And then Quincy Jones came out with a really, another version of Taking It to the Streets. That's our theme song. I should have brought it here today to play for when I walked up here. Because the message is exactly what we're doing. We're taking it to the streets. We're taking it to the churches and other places of worship. We're taking it to neighborhood associations. We're taking it to the Chamber of Commerce. We're taking it to business leaders across Tampa Bay, as we did at the Palladium, to over 500 people. We're taking it to the National Council of Negro Women. We're taking it to the Pinellas Democrats. We're taking it everywhere we can take it. We are taking it to the League of Women Voters, and they're taking it to the street on June 27th at the Equity Center. We're taking it to the streets because we know it's important for you to know about this work. If you think back 3 or 4 years ago, we had a wonderful opportunity in this city with our charter review. And for the first time in the history of this city, there were 4 amendments there dealing with equity. None of them passed, not a single one. That is when I realized that we have to take it to the streets. And I feel strongly if people understand equity, if people understand the history of racism in this city, the next time we have an opportunity to vote on amendments about equity, it will pass. It will pass. Next slide, please. So the Taking It to the Street is funded by the Foundation for Healthy St. Pete. When I said to them, this can't live on a website, and wrote a proposal for $160,000, they saw the value and they funded it. And so for the next year or more, we are taking it to the streets. I have ambassadors who receive honorariums. That's our Taking It to the Street team. They go out and find places for us to come and do presentations. We will do workshops. We will do whatever it needs to be done for people to understand the importance of this work and that the work is not done. It's not complete. And we need you. We need each and every one of you. We need each and every resident of the city of St. Pete to be involved in this issue of bringing race equity to our community. So how do you get involved? You get involved, number 1. I think these are on different slides. I'm not sure. Maybe not. So number 1, I think, is you can schedule a presentation much like you're doing today. Number 2, I cannot read. Share your story. The best way to deal with racism is by humanizing it. How do you humanize it? By hearing the stories of those who have been victimized by racism. So aside from coming out and talking, we're doing interviews with people who are willing to share their stories of structural experiences with structural racism. So if you've had one, if you know someone who has one, we do interviews. If people need them to be anonymous, that's fine with us. But along with the data we're collecting, we're also collecting those stories. Can somebody tell me what the next one says? Okay, so we have a letter. We have an electronic letter for you to sign, because what we need for you, or what we're asking you to do, is to let the mayor know that you support the Race, Equity, and Quality of Life Commission. The Tampa Bay Times quoted me as saying it's a petition, and I had them correct that. It is not a petition. A petition is when someone does not agree with you and doesn't want to do what you want them to do, so you're petitioning. This is not a petition. This is a letter of support. The mayor needs to know that his constituency agrees that there is a need for this Race, Equity, and Quality of Life Commission. So we've developed an electronic letter so you can go to that link and you would be able to complete it and show your support for this commission. What was the next one? Learn more. That's what you're doing now. And what's the last one? Thank you. To become taking it to the street liaison. There's a lot to be done, and so we are asking if there's an organization and there's someone who would like to be a liaison to us to keep updated with information as we do our podcasts and our YouTube videos. We can release them to you and you can share them with your organization. So if someone's interested in doing that, please let me know. And is there one up there about the Race Equity Index? Okay, that's it. So I am working with the group. Sharon Joy Kleisch is here. And we've been working on what's called a Race Equity Index scorecard. We've been working on it for about a year, and it ties in beautifully with the work that we're doing around structural racism. So may I have the next slide? And this tells you a little bit about what we do. So people have always been confused about equality and equity, and this is just, it gives you a clear picture of the difference. Equality is giving everyone the same and thinking it's going to make a difference in everyone's lives. And as you can see by that picture, it doesn't. Equity means giving according to the needs. Some will need more than others. But what we really want is justice. And with justice, there's no wooden fence up there at all. There's a chain link fence, and no matter where you are, you can see through to the ball game. So we're looking at equity and justice. Next slide, please. So knowing how St. Pete stands in terms of equity is a critical first step, and that's what the Race Equity Index scorecard will do. We're developing a scorecard that the city of St. Pete can use, your church can use, any organization can use to measure where they are on the race equity continuum. And so the next slide, please. These are some of the things we're looking at. Economic vitality, and these are all of the measurements for looking at economic vitality. The next slide, we're looking at readiness. How ready is this city? The next slide, please. We're looking at connectedness. Sharon Joy will love that because she's the connection partners. We're looking at connectedness because we are connected. We don't all recognize that we are one and we're all connected, but we are. And so we need to look at how are people connected in many ways to get healthy food, to get the health care they need. And so these are some of the preliminary equity categories we're looking at for our scorecard: income growth, housing burdens and evictions, disconnected youth, procurement and contracting of city funders, all of these. And look at that, the power and voting, that's so important, law enforcement, employment. These are some of the preliminary equity categories we are intending for our race equity scorecard. So how can you get involved in that? As we develop a draft or the various drafts of the Race Equity Scorecard, we want to take it to the streets, either through a World Cafe or just a conversation. We want people to see our drafts and give us input, give us feedback, tell us what you think. Are we measuring the right things? Are there other things we should be measuring? So if Allendale wants to be involved in that, please let us know, and we'll be happy to come and do a World Cafe or another type of forum to get your input. And lastly, this is a QR code for actually evaluating the presentation today. This presentation was not meant to go into depth in the racism study. This presentation was made to generate interest and awareness for you then to go deeper into the study, which you all have already done and which your pastor will continue in more ways than one. And the final slide is to tell you how you can connect with us. We have a telephone number, we have a Facebook page, although Facebook and social media is something I'm not too much into right now. And then we have an email address. But if you want to know more information, if you have another group you're involved in, your neighborhood association, if you would like for others to hear this presentation, please feel free to contact us. Once again, this is not about a particular group of people. This is about our entire community. Because when there's equity in place for all of us, we all benefit. It's not if we win, you lose. It's not that kind of situation. If one wins, we all win. Thank you so much for your interest. And I think that after the service, if there's anyone who would like to talk more or ask questions, I'll be happy to be around to do that for you. Once again, thank you so much.
Now, some will watch our service and think that this doesn't have anything to do with worship, but it's at the very heart of our worship. It's the very heart of who we are as followers of Jesus. As we read the story this morning, this Spirit is to be poured out on all sons and daughters and every sibling, on everyone. If we want to be in a community where the Spirit is truly poured out on all, we have to live and deconstruct ways where there have been barriers. So thank you, Ms. Gwendolyn Reese, again, for being here to tell the story and to call us to be involved to create a different future. Thank you so much.